The life of young Mizuto has completely changed after his father married the mother of his ex-girlfriend, the beautiful Yumi. Now, Yumi has become his stepsister, and the two will need to get along with each other in front of their parents. Meanwhile, the couple Minato and Yui are very happy, thinking that the children are getting along well. After all, nowadays it's completely normal for a family to form this way. Sometime later, Yumi goes to the protagonist's room to complain that he only calls her by her first name. However, she is doing the same, so she says that from now on, he should call her older sister. But the boy refuses since he is the older brother. Coincidentally, they were both born on the same day, but Yumi was born at 11:04 a.m., and Mizuto was born at 11:34 a.m., which is half an hour later. Despite the girl being born first, Mizuto thinks of a better way to resolve this conflict by making a bet where they both need to act like well-behaved step-siblings. Sooner or later, one of them will let an insult slip without realizing it, and whoever does it first will lose and assume the role of the younger sibling. The game begins, and Yumi decides to mess with the protagonist's books to try to induce him to anger and lose the challenge. However, the young man quickly notices this strategy and remains calm. But the girl is cunning and gets close to messing with his secret drawer. With this, the protagonist has the idea of using his charm to confuse his rival. She falls for it and calls him in a way that a normal sister wouldn't, thus losing the bet. However, Mizuto sees that she is clearly angry and calls her older sister just to even things out. The next day is the first day of school, and the parents take them to the ceremony since both are in the same class and have the same last name on the register. Yumi used to be a very shy person in elementary school and wants to change all that in high school. That's why she became the first-year representative and gave a speech in front of everyone, having passed the admission test with the best grades in the school. Later, some random guys start talking to Mizuto and ask if he and the brunette are really siblings. The boy says yes and then goes to the bathroom, where he hears that the random guy is actually interested in Yumi and just wants to use her brother as a stepping stone to get to her. Speaking of the young lady, she discovers the motivation of those boys towards her older brother and adopts a different strategy to arrive at school with him the next day, giving a public demonstration of affection for her brother, which raises doubts about whether they are really siblings. Later, Yumi's mother informs her that she and her husband will arrive late, so the children will need to prepare something to eat. Mizuto demonstrates good culinary skills and cooks a nice dinner. During the meal, the brunette tells him to forget what happened in the morning at the school entrance. In fact, the boy had already forgotten until his companion reminded him. This intriguing phrase makes Yumi think a lot during her bath about how to destabilize the boy, as he always seems to pretend to be calm just to appear to be a good brother. With this, she decides to leave the bathroom and go to the sofa wearing only a towel. Our protagonist loses his composure and turns red with each passing second. Soon, the blessed towel seems about to fall, and Mizuto arrives to cover the woman with his hoodie. He knows that the girl is a reserved person most of the time and sometimes acts impulsively, doing suspicious things. So she reveals that she couldn't stand seeing those boys belittling her new brother and acted that way to protect someone in the family. While saying this, she trips and falls in front of him, ending with both of them on the sofa in a very interesting position. At this moment, it's hard to hold back the feelings they still have for each other since elementary school. When their lips are about to touch, the parents arrive home, and the only option is for Yumi to hide inside the furniture so that the two are not misinterpreted. In the first physical education class, another random guy approaches the protagonist to say he wants to take the test with him. But Mizuto warns that if he's getting close just to approach Yumi, he shouldn't even try because it won't work. The random young man introduces himself as Kawanami and says he will be his first friend without ulterior motives. Meanwhile, inside the girls' locker room, a girl analyzes Yumi's airbags and says she is quite potent. After some stares, she introduces herself as Minami, and it seems a new friendship is about to begin. The aptitude test begins, and the new friend demonstrates being quite athletic by managing to do 55 jumps. Mizuto, who is there, does one sit-up and already wants to give up doing a sequence because he has zero desire to exercise. Meanwhile, Yumi wants to maintain her model student posture and gives her all in the tests to achieve good results. But the brunette overdoes it, and after the 50-meter race, she ends up fainting from exhaustion. Luckily, her hero was ready to prevent a hard fall and tells her not to push herself since she is not used to it. The two stop in the infirmary, and Yumi reveals that she spent the previous day trying to prepare for today's exams. This fear of failing makes Minami see the humanity of the popular girl and feel more comfortable around her, indicating that this new friendship will be long and lasting. After leaving the infirmary, Mizuto appears to see if his sister is okay, and the friend quickly notices the kindness between the two. The next day, the protagonist tells that Yumi has a high fever and therefore missed school, but Minami is very worried and almost climbs on top of the protagonist, asking him things like if she could visit. Kawanami joins the conversation, and Mizuto ends up accepting a visit from the girl. As they go down, they pass by the market and finally arrive home. Poor Yumi is sleeping and wakes up so weak and sleepy that she sees Mizuto in his elementary school clothes. Minami arrives cheerfully and says she brought ingredients to make rice porridge. Since she heard from Yumi that her brother is good at cooking, she asks the boy for help in cooking. During preparation, she starts talking about relationships. Even though he denies wanting to date, she notices that he has dated before due to his reaction. She questions how it would be if the boy got a girlfriend while living with his sister, but Mizuto says he doesn't plan to have one, and even if he does, he won't be introducing or asking for permission. Anyway, the rice porridge is ready, and Yumi even gets to be fed. When it's time to go home, Minami notes that the two are actually half-siblings, and not legitimate siblings as most think. Later, the brunette comments that her dear friend is getting along well with Mizuto and starts to feel jealous. It's up to the boy to clarify that the girl is just extroverted and gets along with everyone naturally. The last request from the brunette is for the companion to stay with her that night until she feels better. This makes him remember elementary school when the two met and spent a lot of time together as a couple. This teenage romance suffered from small misunderstandings and resulted in a separation. With the end of classes, all this changed even more with their parents' marriage. After a good nap, Yumi seems much better and asks her caregiver for several things. But the protagonist, who is not foolish, already grabs a thermometer to check her temperature and sees that the fever has indeed passed, and the brunette was just taking advantage of the condition to get attention. As always, Mizuto acts calmly, and now that the two are siblings, he promises he won't leave her side without warning. At another moment, Yumi begins to remember that during high school, she kept everything her boyfriend gave her in a box and adored it as if it were sacred. But while remembering this romantic act, the girl wonders why she is holding the boy's underwear. After smelling it strangely, she realizes the bizarre attitude she is doing. This could also condemn her to become the younger sister since that previous bet is still valid. Therefore, she needs to return it as soon as possible without being discovered. The plan is to wait for Mizuto to sleep to return it. After some time, she doesn't hear any sound through the wall and, looking in the hallway, doesn't see anyone either. But at that moment, the two leave their rooms at the same time and find each other holding the other's underwear. Thus, they both go to the living room and play rock, paper, scissors to decide who will explain first. The brunette loses and starts saying that she picked up the underwear that was falling from the washing machine. When she went to return it, her mother appeared, so she took it to her room hidden and ends up revealing that she didn't have the habit of keeping her boyfriend's thing. The protagonist seems to like knowing this, but now it's his turn to explain. Mizuto says it was just an accident earlier. He picked up the bra that was falling from the washing machine, and when he went to return it, his father appeared. Yumi doesn't believe it at all, but that's exactly what happened, according to his word. Anyway, both lost the bet, and this incident will be considered a tie, so each will have the right to ask the other for a favor. After another day of school, while the brunette is returning home, she sees her half-brother in a cafe accompanied by a girl with glasses. The next day, she asks her friend for help identifying who that girl might be, and the options are many since her appearance is quite common. Upon arriving home, Yumi notices a different pair of shoes at the entrance, which could only mean that Mizuto brought the girl home. So Yumi takes a photo of the pair of shoes and calls her brother, asking him to leave the house to buy green tea. Seconds later, she hears footsteps in the hallway and thinks he went to buy the tea. But upon reaching the room, she is surprised by Mizuto, who is still at home. However, the pair of female shoes is no longer there, indicating that the unknown girl has left. Confused about the whole situation, he decides to tell the supposed truth that he brought a colleague into the house but is now too exhausted to explain. This makes the half-sister's imagination run wild, thinking that the two did something. So each sibling goes to their room, and the young man begins to remember when he was approached in the library the other day. The girl with glasses and black hair approached, asking to marry him, and it was actually just Minami with glasses and a wig. It turns out that the girl wants to marry Mizuto to get closer to Yumi, and thus be able to do various things with the girl as her sister-in-law. Some of these things involve bathing together and taking care of each other's beauty. That's why she continues in disguise and follows her suitor everywhere, like in the cafe and now at home, meaning the girl simply invaded the house, and the boy didn't even know, but he invented that for his sister because he didn't know the truth. He tells all this to Kawanami, who reveals that Minami is a very impulsive person and obsessed with the things she likes. An example of this is in elementary school when she started dating and was very obsessed with her boyfriend. Initially, the young man thought it was all wonderful, but 3 months later, the poor guy fainted from so much stress due to the girlfriend tormenting him every day. The only solution Mizuto has available now is to take a more direct approach, and Kawanami advises him to do it in a different way so that she understands. That's when Mizuto goes to his half-sister to ask for the favor from the previous incident, stating that the next day the two will have a real date. The day of the date arrives, and Yumi is all dressed up and thoughtful about why her half-brother demanded this as punishment. Then the boy arrives, and it seems it will be very difficult to hide the old romantic feelings. The location of the date will be the city aquarium, which many couples and families visit to learn about marine life. The two seem to get along very well in the eyes of the couple behind them, who are actually Minami and Kawanami in disguise. This idea came from the brilliant mind of the new friend, who aims to end Minami's crazy obsession with Yumi. During the aquatic show, the brunette wonders if this plan will really work, but before the date, Kawanami made it clear that he should compliment his companion's clothes to make it seem like a real date. The protagonist doesn't know how to do this properly and accidentally says she looks strangely beautiful, but to his surprise, it works, and Yumi thanks him for the compliment. Meanwhile, the maniac observes, still very suspicious. After that, a random father ends up bumping into the girl, and the brunette takes the opportunity to hug her, which triggers many feelings. But as usual, Yumi utters a very thorny phrase for him to move away. During a bathroom break at the location, Mizuto calls Kawanami, and the friend is dying of laughter. Both want to shift the responsibility onto each other, but the protagonist knows he needs to handle it alone since he initiated this date. Meanwhile, dear Yumi is in the external area and apparently got lost after leaving the women's bathroom. The half-brother calls to find out where she is and just says he will pick her up. But this sudden change in his behavior leaves the poor brunette very confused about her feelings, which have been alive since elementary school. She begins to remember when they met and had their first date. It was at a festival with a lot of people, where the young woman also got lost, but before being found, she only thought about how she was being a burden to her beloved. However, Mizuto recognized all these flaws and still said that it wouldn't change what he felt for her. Even after some time, this scene repeats itself with her being found by the hero. In this reunion, Mizuto makes a joke to improve her sense of direction, and after that, both become more comfortable in each other's presence. At dusk, the date comes to an end with Yumi going home first, and before Mizuto leaves, he ends up meeting Minami. The girl apologizes for entering his house without permission that day and asks him not to tell the brunette. The protagonist says he will keep quiet for the sake of their friendship, but the crazy girl warns that she will still try to marry him just to live with her future sister-in-law. Meanwhile, the brunette is at home thinking about everything that happened, and with the arrival of her brother, she decides what his punishment will be for keeping her bra. In this case, she wants a photo session to take advantage of the formal clothes he is wearing. The girl becomes smitten, and after a warm hug, the request ends. The next morning, it seems that Minami's obsession has been resolved for now. With Mother's Day approaching, the dear daughter had the idea of buying a gift with her new half-brother to show they are getting along. The boy even refuses to go at first, but can't resist seeing his companion so dressed up. Upon arriving at the mall, the protagonist's gift suggestions are the tackiest possible, and in the end, they both end up choosing a bouquet of flowers as a gift. Such a demonstration of affection leaves the mother so moved that she goes crying with joy to tell her husband. At dusk, the boy goes to a small home shrine and thinks about his late biological mother, but now this difficult moment is accompanied by the kindness of his half-sister. Following this idea of giving gifts, Mizuto thinks about giving the parents some time alone since they are newlyweds and haven't been able to enjoy it much due to responsibilities. Since buying a trip is something very out of their budget, the only option would be for the two to spend the night together in a motel and leave the parents alone at home. For this, they would have to lie about their ages. But Yumi doesn't like this idea, and according to the protagonist, it wouldn't work because it's also quite expensive. The next day, he says he found a place for them to stay, which is at Kawanami's house. By mere coincidence, Minami lives next door, so there's nothing to worry about. Then the weekend arrives, and since the friends live in the same building, they define each area, with one side being the girl's territory and the other the boy. Despite Kawanami denying such proximity, the two have been neighbors since elementary school and are very close. While in the room, the boy wonders how far Mizuto and Yumi have come in a relationship, and even without knowing anything, he provokes the girls by shouting the indecencies the protagonist did with her, which makes the brunette very irritated. But the protagonist doesn't let it go and ties up the house owner. In this, he finds a beautiful text by Kawanami when he was a child. In this work, it says a possible dream of the boy to become a police officer to marry and protect Minami. After hearing this, the girl also becomes embarrassed and nervous. After much confusion, at night, the four go to dinner, and by coincidence, they go to the same place and even at very close table. Kawanami and Minami know exactly what each one will eat, which only reinforces how close they are. During dinner, there are several provocations from Kawanami and then from Minami. But back in the room, the protagonist only wants to study since the exams are approaching. The boy is very intelligent, but this excessive effort is because he doesn't want to score lower than his sister. This ends up motivating Kawanami to study together and avoid scoring lower than the neighbor. A few hours later, the two go to the balcony and start talking about a school trip from elementary school. It was on that magical night that Yumi began to like the brunette, and seeing the friends' relationship, she learned that certain feelings only bloom over time. The study routine remains firm, and for the brunette, she needs to continue being the student with the best grades in the school. The first time she was surpassed was in elementary school when Mizuto scored higher than her in math. With a lot of study and sacrificing some hours of sleep, the girl returned to the top but noticed that the boy didn't seem to care about it. But it was in the library that he touched on the subject of her being the smartest, and deep down, he was keeping an eye on her, and at that moment, she fell in love. Apparently, this competition will happen again, and being in first place is very important for the brunette. So the first day ends well with a high score of 94, but Japanese is the half-brother's strong point, and if he scored high, it could make a big difference. Soon, the girl can't hold back her curiosity and goes to his room to see the test and know the score. But the brunette gets very irritated when she sees that he left some questions blank on purpose because if he answered them, he would take her first place. She interprets it as if he is taking it easy and despising her intellect. In the middle of the discussion, the mother prevents the daughter from slapping her brother, and after that, she runs to call her husband. Since the protagonist also got irritated, he only did it because he cares about her, and Yumi understands but still thinks it's wrong and feels hurt. The second and third days of the exam fly by, and on the publication date, Yumi discovers she came in second place. Even though in the first test he scored lower, he worked hard to do well in the others and come out on top, all to teach the girl a lesson. Thus, the model student is surpassed by her half-brother, and she already thinks she will be forgotten for not being in first place anymore. But she is completely mistaken because her friends congratulate her on the result. This way, the young woman finally realizes that true friendships are not based on grade rankings, all thanks to the protagonist. In this, she goes looking for him until she finds the boy in the library at a very peculiar moment. Coincidentally, Mizuto has just met a student who is also fascinated by literature. Her name is Isana, and she doesn't have much notion of how friendship works. A curious fact is that she has a habit of being barefoot in the library. When it's time to go home, the two meet Minami and Yumi at the school exit. Isana hasn't been introduced to the girls yet, and apparently, she is too shy to greet anyone, and for some reason, Yumi leaves without even saying hi. Next, the reason is revealed. Seeing Mizuto so close to another girl caused great jealousy in her, but from the next day, she will start acting kindly towards the protagonist so that this jealousy doesn't bother her anymore. Obviously, Mizuto notices this, and after some advice from the new friend, he goes straight to the brunette's room dressed in those elegant clothes. After destabilizing the companion, he is very direct about the behavior change. Thus, she reveals being jealous, and Mizuto doesn't think it's a problem. It will be a big problem if she continues avoiding and acting like someone else. The girl understands that this way it will be easier to deal with and try to be herself. So at the end of the next day, the new friend and the half-sister meet in a calm way. In the morning, Isana finds a mysterious letter in the locker saying for her to go alone to a specific place. It's the restaurant where Yumi and Minami are waiting for her. The crazy friend says that the two know her secret about liking the protagonist, but it would be in a romantic sense. But Isana denies liking him that way, and in this, the duo starts a feelings test that consists of showing a video of Mizuto sleeping while Minami whispers absurd things in her ear. Soon, the mischievous face gives everything away, and maybe the introverted girl really loves the protagonist. The problem is that she has never gone through this in her life, so Minami opens up and says that the two will help her with this, even if Yumi hasn't accepted anything. But seeing that the friend doesn't have confidence in herself, she ends up identifying a lot with how she was in elementary school and is therefore motivated to help as well. In this way, the trio decides to start the dating mission, and the first step is to evaluate a normal situation between the two. The friends will stay hidden in the library, observing how Mizuto interacts with her. The first contact is very weak because it doesn't even seem like the boy sees the girl as a woman, so it will be necessary to make him remember this through physical touch. That's when her front commission comes into play. But even using this charm, the boy doesn't seem to want to take advantage. The three gather in the bathroom, and before thinking about giving up, Minami says it's time to change the look. The young lady returns to the library much more dressed up, but Mizuto doesn't even notice, and with each approach of the girl, he only moves away. He asks her to stop if she doesn't want to suffer the consequences. Then he messes up her hair again, and apparently, he only sees the girl as a friend. Even so, Minami is a psychopath and thinks differently from her friends because, in her view, the chances of success are greater if she declares herself as soon as possible. Yumi is undecided about this, but Isana schedules a time behind the school for the two to meet. The girls prepare the friend for this difficult moment and then hide behind the window. Mizuto finally appears, and with great shyness, the introverted girl opens up about how the brunette is the first person to treat her so well and that she wants to be his girlfriend. The protagonist is also sincere about his feelings and apologizes since he won't be able to accept the request. There is still a very important person for him who lives in his heart, and even if the boy doesn't deserve her feelings, he can't leave her aside because he couldn't bear to see her crying. While saying this, Yumi listens and gets emotional because she knows that person is her. Then, before the episode ends, is seen with the protagonist in the library, even after being rejected. The girls question this, but she says she can still be his friend. Even without much romantic experience, she seems to be very mature in this regard. In another reading meeting in the library, Isana asks to see Mizuto's book collection because she wants to know what the characters he liked in elementary school looked like. Apparently, the introverted friend is closer to the brunette, even though she was rejected. Anyway, Mizuto accepts that the companion goes to his house. Before this day, the young man meets with Yumi and Minami to revamp the look. The friends will cover everything as long as the young lady doesn't refuse to try on the clothes. The mischievous girl chooses several combinations that end up being equally charming on the shy girl. That's why she suggests Isana copy Yumi's demure style, who, in turn, will choose something tighter so as not to have two girls wearing the same clothes. The long-awaited day of the meeting arrives, and the young lady is already at the door of her prince's castle. His parents are impressed to see their son arriving with a girl, and in this, the two go straight to the room for her to take a look at the book collection. Yumi also appears to make sure nothing suspicious will happen between the four pairs, but she didn't count on the shy girl feeling so comfortable as to lie directly on the boy's bed. The brunette is perplexed to see this freedom but remembers that it's okay since the girl was rejected once and there won't be a romantic atmosphere. But out of nowhere, the visitor asks for a shoulder massage to relieve tension, and the two start doing this in front of the half-sister, who gets upset seeing this interaction. The two go to talk in the hallway, and apparently, Isana still hasn't stopped liking the protagonist, not only in a romantic sense but also in friendship. After all, Mizuto is the only friend she has, and if new friendships appear, her space could gradually be lost. Reflecting on this, Yumi says she can also become her friend. While Isana goes to the bathroom, Yumi returns to the room and starts demanding that the companion also put on her socks like he does with the friend. But this peculiar scene is interrupted by a cry for help from Isana, who was approached by the duo's parents and needs to be saved from a bombardment of questions. They already think the girl is their son's ex-girlfriend because she didn't tell everything that happened correctly. Next, the protagonist accompanies the friend part of the way, and seeing the young lady leaving, he thinks about the old relationship he had with Yumi. At that time, their first kiss was in a very reserved place, not to mention the first time she went to his house. Just sitting on the same bed was already a complicated task. At that moment, the boy broke the tension by inviting his beloved to read a book. Thus, the hours passed, and when the brunette thought something hotter would happen, the guy just said it was better for her to leave because it was already late. Their relationship had completed 6 months, and the brunette was eager to take the next step. The problem was that the boyfriend was too scared to meet these expectations. So in the last year of elementary school, the couple was separated into different classes, and therefore they could only see each other better after classes in the library. Despite this separation, they still created many memories, like at Christmas and on Valentine's Day. Having a relationship helped Yumi overcome her shyness, and one day she even managed to make a new friend. The new friend also liked reading, and little by little, the brunette stopped spending more time with her beloved to give attention to new friendship. Soon, he got tired of her always talking about friends and ended up letting slip a very rude response. He regretted saying that and was going to apologize the next day. However, a random girl started talking to him in the library, and at that exact moment, Yumi arrived. So at the time of forgiveness, the girlfriend already thought the companion was cheating on her, even though it was the first time he talked to that girl. Thus, this misunderstanding ended up driving the two apart. As the days passed, they met by chance in a bookstore, and when they sat together to talk, the couple even agreed to make peace, but even so, the atmosphere remained cold. This story only unfolded at the elementary school graduation ceremony when both agreed to put a definitive end to the relationship. However, a few days later, their parents announced the marriage, and the rest we already know the story. But back to the present time, Yumi goes to the brunette's room and borrows the same book they read alone in his room. Thus, the two remember that moment and finally discover the truth that at that first time, both wanted to do interesting things in bed, but neither had the courage. On another very rainy night, Yumi's mother sends a message saying that all trains stopped for safety reasons, and since she won't be able to get home soon, the brunette and the protagonist will have to spend the night alone taking care of the house. What the girl didn't expect is that a cockroach would appear in her room to disrupt the environment. Even with Mizuto having sprayed insecticide, she is still scared, and just to be safe, she goes to sleep in the same bed as him. For the first time, the former couple is sleeping in the same bed, and after so long, they are very close as they were in the past. The next morning, the father reminds the two that the trip to his hometown is approaching, and it would be good for them to get swimwear to enjoy the river in the area. Soon, the mother suggests they go together to buy new clothes. The young lady starts choosing clothes first, and of course, she needs a second opinion to decide. She doesn't hesitate to show herself to the brunette, and this leaves the poor guy so surprised that he doesn't even know what to say. She chooses that one, and at dusk, the two return home, talking about how the parents are excited about this trip. But on the way, they realize they are passing by the place where they had their first kiss. Soon, a romantic atmosphere arises, and Yumi even assumes a position to kiss Mizuto, but he flicks her to stop thinking nonsense. The next day, Isana makes a new visit, this time to watch a movie, even in a very interesting position. Meanwhile, Yumi is just watching this attraction strategy being executed by the shy girl. But in the end, Mizuto just watched the movie, paying a lot of attention to the details, and didn't even care. These 2 hours of watching leave the boy very tired, and to return the favor, Isana says she will let the brunette lie on her lap. Obviously, the half-sister gets involved in this story, and the final result is that the brunette ends up on the lap of the ex-girlfriend. Isana finds this approach a bit strange, but after a lot of idle talk, the young lady leaves, and Yumi is left alone with Mizuto in the living room. This situation makes the brunette think about the things they have already gone through and how it would have been if she hadn't created that misunderstanding. Before sleeping, her mother asks what's going on between the protagonist and his not-so-shy friend. The girl wanted to know some gossip, and Yumi reveals that the girl was doing things to get his attention. Anyway, the mother is happy that her son is getting along with a girl and even tells her daughter not to be left behind and find a boyfriend too. Unfortunately, she can't say it, but it's certain that she still can't forget her beloved. The big day of the trip arrives, and the mother, along with the daughter, is taken to meet Grandma Natsumi. With her are the protagonist's second cousins, Madoka and Chikuma. The welcome barbecue begins by the river, and as expected, the protagonist stays away while everyone else has lunch. The adults comment on how Mizuto's father managed to take good care of his son. He ended up becoming single shortly after the young man was born, and therefore, everyone was worried about what the future would hold for the two. Fortunately, everyone grew up strong and healthy this way. Yumi realizes how much she needs to protect the existence of this family. Meanwhile, the second cousin can't help but notice the young lady's slim waist and beautiful bikini. They talk about the boy, and in Madoka's view, he remains very closed off. The proof of this is that after eating, he already wants to leave, but the brunette doesn't escape and is pulled into the river. At night, while the family members are drinking a lot, Mizuto stays in the great-grandfather's office, reading one of the many books in the room. The work of the moment is an autobiography of the old man, written as a pastime and not published anywhere. The old man was one of the soldiers during World War II and wrote about a period when he was imprisoned after the war. This is the first book the brunette managed to read alone, and it's time for Yumi to read the work that shaped her beloved. The story is short but manages to be so emotional that it makes the young woman cry, just as the boy cried when he finished reading it for the first time. Taking advantage of the momentum, the young lady asks who his first love was, and the answer makes it seem like that person is Madoka. The next morning, the girls go to choose what clothes to wear at the summer festival, but the brunette's mind is elsewhere. She is very thoughtful about the idea of the former boyfriend having fallen in love once before it was her. This expression makes Madoka suspect that Yumi likes Mizuto. The very experienced girl manages to decipher this whole love problem and advises the girl to take the opportunity to resolve these feelings. So at dusk, the cousin appears with the protagonist and locks the two in a room using the excuse that they need to look for a lamp for her. At this moment, Yumi finally manages to discover what is bothering her. After ending the relationship, she thought she was free and wouldn't suffer anymore, but after several moments alone, she regretted both ending it and being unfair to him. Gathering all her courage, she speaks about how she feels and can't hold back the tears. But this whole situation makes Yumi realize that, in fact, the protagonist's first love was herself. Later, the girls get ready for the big night of the festival, and just as the young lady looked incredibly beautiful, the protagonist is also well dressed in a blue robe. For the first time in so many years, she doesn't throw a tantrum to go to the crowd forming in the square, but to make sure they won't get lost, the half-sister holds the half-brother's hand. But this time, it's different because all the bad feelings have been let out. Even though it's a festival in the countryside, the stalls have many attractions, and after the four have fun, they meet the parent. In this, the cousin comments on something that happens every year. The protagonist disappears a little before the fireworks display. This happened because at the time, he was looking for a place to call Yumi before 8 p.m. With all this life of dating and half-siblings, the brunette managed to piece together the puzzle of why the boy feels so lonely. Meanwhile, he is thinking about how his life was different because his birth was very difficult, and everyone looked at him with pity. This lack of identity opened a huge void in him that only began to be colored after he read his great-grandfather's book for the first time. After that, this passion for books made him think that the content of the pages was the real world and that the real world was nothing more than fiction. This only changed when he met Yumi and started to care. He realized that the girl was very clumsy, like when she got lost at the festival. At the first meeting, he felt the girl's presence and realized he was doing the same thing they did to him. This made him identify to the point of engraving the girl in his heart more intensely than any book he had ever read, making him want to live again. After remembering this, the two meet under the moonlight to talk about the first kiss they gave. This gives her the courage to ask why the companion chose her to fall in love with. Maybe it was just a work of chance, but one way or another, the important thing is that after 2 years, the two are watching the fireworks for the first time and having the chance to give the kiss they should have given a long time ago. The next morning, Madoka is very happy to know that things went well the night before, and when it's time to leave, it's clear that the brunette's mood is much lighter. But returning to the school routine, tomorrow already starts agitated with Kawanami and Isana meeting for the first time. Apparently, the protagonist's two friends are very jealous when it comes to friendship with the brunette, and these high school friendships will certainly still give a lot to talk about. Despite this, the half-siblings are happy with the new friendships, and even if they can't bring back the happiness they had in elementary school, they still have the chance to write a new story. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. To show that you're a true fan, leave a comment with the secret word star, and I'll make sure you get a heart. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing content. See you next time!